like, I'm dope. I'm fly. I got my act together. I got a business. I'm working up the corporate, landscape, right? But then sometimes when you open up your mouth, the things that you say and the way that you present yourself don't reflect how dope you are.
Support you in that mission, and so it allows you to
because you want to think about it. If you can give your attendees a win before
or through your company, so that business owners can actually matter that we can all learn from that, because essentially. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Event Gems. My name is Natasha Wright, Chief Experience Curator at the Diamond Butterfly Productions, and I am super excited to bring on my guest today, Shahara Downing. She helps entrepreneurs with clarifying their message, showing up confidently, and public speaking. And so today, the episode is titled Shine Bright Like a Diamond, How Storytelling and Effective on-camera presence can boost your biz. So welcome, Shahara. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Natasha. What's up, everybody listening?
Yeah, so I'm so excited about getting into this conversation because I know when I started out my entrepreneurial journey, really I wanted to show up confidently and I wanted to be able to present and speak confidently, but I just didn't feel confident enough, so I took a class I joined Toastmasters actually, which kind of like helped me with public speaking, getting over the fear of public speaking. So I know that for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's probably the same thing that they're dealing with. And then especially when you're planning a virtual event, you want to make sure that you're showing up confidently and with clarity of message when you do your events, right? So before we get into the conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you come to start teaching entrepreneurs about public speaking?
For some reason, I am always compelled to share these 3 items with folks so that you know me personally, and then I'll dip a little bit into professionally. But I am a subject matter expert, and I would say leading subject matter expert on the cult classic Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. Okay. That is my absolute favorite movie. I was probably like 5, 6, and 7 sitting in front of the TV watching it on repeat. It was very inappropriate to my parents. I don't know what they were thinking, but anyways, it's one of my favorite. I absolutely love tacos. I live here in Texas. I kid you not, Texas has some of the best tacos next to California. And then lastly, I am probably the world champion when it comes to making Rice Krispie treats. My Rice Krispie treats will win any taste testing ever in the world. So
yes, invite me over. I love it.
I love Rice Krispie treats so much. Like, you know how you go over to people's houses and then you bring a bottle of wine or you bring some Crown, because that's also my drink of choice. But okay. I will bring some Rice Krispies, some butter, and some marshmallows, and I will cook some Rice Krispie treats at your house as a gift. So that's kind of like
throw down. Yes. Yeah. You're the type of guest that I love coming over to my house because I love to eat.
Yeah, well, I will make my world famous Rice Krispie treats for you. But outside of those major accomplishments, I got my start in public speaking when I was really young. I always give it the story of when I was in 5th grade. We had this organization called the Maywood Mediators, and we were trained on conflict management. So imagine me running around as a 5th grader on the playground trying to diffuse conflicts, right? But that literally, I think, was the first experience that I had where an adult empowered my voice. And so because I believe I was empowered at such a young age, they told me I could talk. They told me I can get up in people's business. I've been doing it ever since. It evolved. I did some acting throughout middle school, high school, college, and through my early 20s, did a lot of commercial work, did a lot of voiceover work, and then moved into the event space, live MC work. And then I transitioned into corporate training. So teaching, boardroom members and executives and employee bases on how to contribute and collaborate in conversations within the workplace. And that's where, I really rooted myself in my profession. And so now I realized I was giving my best and my brightest and my highest talent and skill set to those companies when I needed to be giving it to the company I actually want to keep, which is women like yourself, Natasha. Mm-hmm. And so that's when about a year ago, I transitioned to working with real people, working with consumers, not just corporate contracts, but really working with individuals. So for the last year, I've been focusing on being able to help women, and not just women, but just people in general who ultimately feel like you be like, I'm dope, I'm fly, I got my act together, I got a business, I'm working up the corporate, landscape, right? But then sometimes when you open up your mouth, the things that you say and the way that you present yourself don't reflect how dope you are. And so that's kind of what my goal is. And so that's a short, long story of how I got to where I'm at today.
Amen. Amen. I love that. I so agree with you. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs can definitely relate to your story of, giving your skill set, your talents to a corporate entity or, on somebody else's job. But then you can really just like take everything that you've learned there and transfer it to your business and make profit from it. Right. And so I love that you share that story. And your story is amazing. I could tell that you've done some voiceover work because like your voice is so powerful. So yes, I love it. So yeah, I think like for a lot of people, public speaking is such a huge fear for them. They get so nervous, even being on camera or even just standing in front of an audience. And right now, we're not standing in front of audiences. For the most part, we're doing a lot of things virtually. Why do you think that public speaking is such a huge fear for people? And then why do you think it's important for business owners to really hone in on their public speaking skills?
I think that people have, and I think this grows and it evolves and it changes based off of, how I learn people. But ultimately, I feel like the reason why people have a fear of public speaking, or sometimes not even just a fear, but just apprehensive about being seen by many when you're talking, I think it's two reasons. One, it's just you don't have enough practice, right? Everyone doesn't have the upbringing that I did, where my parents, I think they just used me as entertainment, right? So people come to the house and they be like, do something. And I gotta come up with something.
Entertain the folks.
Right, I was entertaining people. So I was singing Michael Jackson. I was doing, crisscross, let me make you jump. I'm just coming up with stuff, right? So everyone does not have, experience that takes them back to childhood. So then you get into really high school when you become aware of the fact and the idea that you've got to talk to a number of different people at the same time. Sometimes the fear of public speaking is rooted in our childhood. So back in kindergarten, first grade, they have this thing called show and tell. You got to get up in front of the class and show and tell. But nobody really taught you or prepared you or even encouraged you that you could do it. So from the very beginning. So I think lack of experience from an early age is what kind of builds this resistance to public speaking. But then secondly, as you move into adulthood, as you get through high school, you get through college, and then you start interviewing for jobs, I believe that the second reason why people have resistance or apprehension to public speaking is a lack of self-awareness. And when you are public speaking, you're kind of putting yourself out there, right? And everybody's looking at you. They're like, all eyes on me, right? And that is a very fearful thing when you're afraid that somebody's going to see you. When people are looking at you, you're not really, I think you think that you're afraid of just, okay, are they going to think I'm going to sound dumb, or am I going to say something that's going to make me sound stupid? I'm going to say something that's going to undermine my credibility. I'm being judged, which is a scary thing. But when you feel like you're being judged, if you're not completely assured, certain, confident, and really have embraced who you are first, then when these people come looking at you, whether they judging you for better or worse, you're still going to feel a little like naked. You're going to be like, oh my God, they're going to see me. They're going to see me. So the more self-aware you are, I believe the easier it is to face people and open up your mouth and share. So.
Yeah, I love that. And, when you're talking about how that fear is rooted in childhood, I'm thinking about it made me think about my own upbringing, right? And I'm Jamaican, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate from Caribbean culture. It's like, be seen but not heard type of thing, or don't join adult conversations. And so it's so interesting when you brought that up, and it made me really reflect on my own upbringing about, how your voice can get silenced as a young child, and how that could really like carry through as an adult, and make you have that fear of really speaking and showing up, and also, for you to show up and not be afraid of also being judged and being seen and being naked, like you said. So I really love that. And then, so let's talk about like, how do we show up more confidently? You talk about like having that self-awareness about yourself, but how do you get to that place where you now show up more confidently and not necessarily thinking about what everybody else might be saying, or not feeling afraid to make a mistake? So can you talk about how we get to develop that confidence within ourselves?
Yeah, when I first started coaching and training, I would have these different tips and kind of techniques on exuding confidence, to appear more confident. And they had to do with a lot of the exterior. But when I started really working with individuals and going a little bit deeper, I have now come to find out that it is about the internal work. That confidence does not come. You can amp your confidence. You can amplify your confidence by wearing some cute earrings. My brows looking good today, girl. So I am like,
yes.
Let me get all up in this screen. So
show the people.
So you can see my eyebrows, right? My eyebrows gave me just an added confidence to put my face all in the screen. However, eyebrows are not enough for me to show up. Earrings, the way you dress, what you had for breakfast, maybe you woke up on the good side of the bed that morning. That's not enough for you to show up confidently. It has to start within. And I sometimes feel like I disappoint people when they're thinking about, I want to be a more confident public speaker. And then I come to them and I say, well, what are your insecurities? What are you not certain about with yourself? What was the biggest mistake that you made that you still may be holding on to consciously right now and subconsciously? Where are your limitations? Why are you apprehensive? What is the real resistance about? What is it that you don't like about yourself? What is it that you fear that people are going to see that you don't want them to see? Now, when you start answering those questions and you cool with them answers on your own, that's where you start to build confidence. Because you ain't like the great philosopher said, I ain't got no worries. And the great philosopher is Lil Wayne. Okay. Lil Wayne
okay. Come through, Lil Wayne.
Come through, Lil Wayne. He said, I ain't got no worries. I ain't got no worries.
Yes.
And when you don't have any worries, you walk into places with a light about you. You walk into places not only with like a physical light that you can see, but with a weight off of your shoulders. We all have different things that plague us internally, that bring us down, that burden us, the baggage, and we have to release some of that baggage in order for our spirit to really shine. That's what confidence is. If you walk into a room and you really don't care what these people got to say about you, then people are going to look at you and say, oh my gosh, she's so confident. She is so confident. So I would say that it begins there. What is it when you show up to work, or when you're working on your business, or you're working with, your contractors, your employees, and you want to come across more confident? Think about the few things that you don't want them to know about, and you need to find a greater peace with those things. Find a greater peace with your insecurities, with your doubts, and with your worries. And the more peace you have with those things, the easier it is for your spirit to show up.
Yes, I love that. And then, so how does that add to the credibility then? If you're showing up more confidently, like how does that add to your credibility as a business owner, or to be able to, because I feel like there is a perception, right? If you're more confident, then that means that you're able to perform better, or your products are better, or your service is better. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, and this is what I kind of call the expert of you. You are the expert of you. Can't nobody challenge you. Can't nobody tell you nothing when you are the expert in you. So now when you're looking at how does this add to my credibility, it's like, what are you the expert on? Are you the expert on makeup? Are you the expert on hair? Are you the expert in finances? What is it? What are your strengths? And and again, this is going all the way back to what I said before about self-awareness. If you know that you're the expert in A and B and C, can't nobody tell you nothing about that. Now, granted, you still want to be open and available and humble because you got to still learn and you still got to be a student of life. I'm not saying go into it with a space of arrogance, but go into it knowing that I have the authority to speak on this. I've got years of experience. This is what I do. There is not ever a time that I'm going to walk into a space and not be the most confident person talking about public speaking, because I know that's what I do. And you can't really tell me nothing.
Facts.
If you had tips, or Shahara, I was watching a podcast. I thought maybe you can try this, you can do that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, give me that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like that. Okay. Oh, I didn't even know I did that. I didn't even know, girl. Thank you. Like I'm still open to receive because I still want to expand in my level of genius. But at the same time, remember who you are. Know what your strengths are. Know what you are an expert in. And when you speak on those things, that adds to your credibility. Now, if you ain't the expert in it, stop trying to talk about it. Stop trying to add your 2 cents, because that's what's going to undermine your credibility. 1, by the people who are listening, and 2, by the feeling that you get when you know you talking about something that you just ain't that sure about. And the more and more that you do that, the more and more you become familiar with that unsure, uncertain type of feeling. And that's the feeling that you carry. So stop talking about the stuff that you don't know. Talk about the stuff that you know.
Good. I love that. I love that you're like, listen, you just give it blunt and sharp. And I love that because I feel like that will help to like interrupt some people. And then, if you do need to, if there's something that you do want to speak on, then at least like hone in on that skill until you start like presenting about it, because otherwise like that's gonna make you not show up as confidently or with as much clarity of message as you would like to. So then let's talk about imposter syndrome, because I feel like that's one of the things that, that this phrase like has been circulating for a while. I've seen it on social media, and then it has entered like different conversations. So I know I saw at IG Live that you did about imposter syndrome, and you were talking about, yeah, you deal with imposter syndrome as well, but it's short-lived. But I think that a lot of people, they dwell in that imposter syndrome-ness. I'm just making up that word for right now. They dwell in that. And so that kind of like impacts or affects like how they actually show up, because they're not as confident, or they feel like I don't belong, or I shouldn't be here, or who am I for someone to be listening to me or taking advice from me, right? Could you get into that a little bit for us? And how can we overcome imposter syndrome when it comes to showing up virtually?
Yeah, I would preface imposter syndrome. And first, what I'll say is to everyone who's listening, I want you to kind of just ask yourself, do I suffer from imposter syndrome? Just take a moment, because we're given a lot of information, but I always try to remember that in these podcasts, there are people who are listening. So I'm like, let me give you a moment to really be a part of this conversation. So ask yourself, do I suffer from imposter syndrome? And just say it to yourself. Oh, yes, I do. I do, suffer from it. No, I don't suffer from it. And for those who are maybe new to this idea of imposter syndrome, it comes down to this place of just saying, you believe that you're a fraud, or you believe that you're given something, or you're working in a place that you're not qualified to be in, right? Imposter syndrome isn't necessarily in direct correlation with your confidence. It's just the belief that maybe I'm going to be seen as a fraud. Because you could be confident about what you're doing, but sometimes maybe not think that it's enough. It's more so about your value and your worth. Because, you don't walk around like, oh, woe is me. But it's like, ooh, I don't know if I'm quite ready for this. Ooh, I don't know if I am prepared enough. Oh, I don't know. That's really, in my mind, what imposter syndrome is. And so I'm actually going to some of these notes, because I remember writing these down. It's about doubting your skill, your talent, or your accomplishments. Are you undermining those? Are you feeling inadequate, like maybe you don't have enough credentials, you don't have enough network, you don't have enough experience, right? These are the things that start to create the feeling of imposter syndrome, not so much about confidence. I mentioned this earlier. Do you feel as if you're a fraud? Like somebody's going to see you and realize, oh my goodness, she's been appointed as our boss and she didn't even go to college. You know, like, these are the things, but these are also the stories that we not only tell ourselves, but then we start to believe these stories. And for me, when I said I deal with imposter syndrome, I begin to tell myself that story. And then when I start listening to it, I'd be like, hold up, that ain't true. Oh, Shahara, stop it, please, boo. So there's one thing to tell ourselves these stories, and then there's another place of it where we start to believe these stories. So when you start hearing these stories, ask yourself if you really believe it. Because if you start believing it, then imposter syndrome will feel like you have it, you know, like it's a disease to catch or something like that. But I would also say, and this is what I wrote in my notes, it's like, why do you believe you're a fraud? If you believe that you're a fraud, and don't tell me you don't believe you're a fraud, because if you're having imposter syndrome, then you're starting to think that. Because if you truly didn't believe, then you wouldn't claim that you suffer from imposter syndrome. So claiming imposter syndrome is also believing that you're a fraud. Do you believe that you're a fraud? If not, then you don't suffer from imposter syndrome. You just have to check some of these negative stories that you're telling yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about that when you go into like a different level of your business. You know, you might be getting larger contracts or larger clients that you're working with, and that might make you feel like, I know for me, that started to make me feel imposter syndrome, because it was like, wait a minute, like, am I qualified enough? You know, and kind of like you said, I'm like, wait a minute, I had to check myself and be like, no, like, you are qualified. You know what you're doing. You're prepared, you're ready, and this is just the next step or the next level of your evolution. So you just have to be confident with knowing that, right? So I love the things that you shared about that, because I think a lot of people, they deal with that, especially when they're transitioning to another level. Now they're feeling that imposter syndrome, wondering if they're qualified enough, feeling like if they're a fraud, or feeling like they don't have whatever it is, and that's playing out in the background. So I think that's so important for us to recognize that, no, you're not a fraud. Check yourself, go through your own self-assessment, and then from there, that would allow you to show up as exactly how you want to show up, right? Or to be perceived.
I was going to say, what you just said reminded me of a song. I don't remember who sang this song, but they said, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yes.
I really like that song, because I do say that. I got to figure out who sang that song. But there was one other thing, just to kind of cap, and it was in my notes, and I just added something based off of listening to you. But separate your feelings, because imposter syndrome is just a feeling. Separate your feelings from fact, right? From, you got the skill set, you have the experience, like, these are facts. You can't change that. Now, if you start, and as you were saying, Natasha, growing and evolving, where you are starting to do things that you've never done before, then I would say separate your feelings from faith, because you're moving into a space of the unknown. You've never done it before, but you have to have faith that you can do it. Because when you start taking on new tasks, new responsibilities, doing new things in your business, maybe you haven't done it before. Maybe you haven't had a win. Maybe you haven't had a success in this phase of your business. However, you have to have faith. So separate feelings from fact. And then when you start to move on that new frontier, a boss woman, separate those feelings from faith.
Yes. And so as you're being that boss woman and you're thinking about planning your virtual event, and showing up for your audience and showing up for your tribe, have you noticed that there is a difference with presenting or speaking on stage, or versus like presenting and speaking virtually on camera? Because I know that for some of us, you might have already been a speaker, a presenter, and now you have to like tackle and transition into this new frontier, this new space face in the virtual world. And I've heard from some persons that they present in person, but once the camera is on, it's a different situation altogether for them. And that creates like a whole nother level of apprehension and fear. So can you talk about the difference in on-stage presentation versus on-camera presentation, and if there's a way to like bridge that gap so that you can still show up confidently?
Yeah, oh, Natasha, it's so much in regards to that. But I use this one thing, and I hope that perhaps for anybody who's listening, maybe this can connect the dots, because there are great differences to speaking on stage versus now being on these virtual stages. Because we're all now we're all really like, we're all Kelly Ripa. You know what I'm saying? We're all Tamron Hall right now, because we're all trying to connect with our audiences through a lens and through a camera. So when you think about how Oprah, Tamron Hall, Kelly Ripa, Ellen, how they connect with millions of people just through television, you kind of got to start seeing yourself as local Ellens and Kelly Ripas and Tamron Halls and Oprahs, right? And they've been able to do this years upon years upon years since television has even, come about. And so the reason why I believe that Oprah and some of these examples that I've given have been able to connect with audiences through a lens, this thing right here, is what I will say, or, I don't know who penned this, but real recognize real. And that translates from in person to on camera. And as long as you're showing up as your authentic self, it will translate through the lens. People will be able to see you. They'll be able to feel you if you saw and felt yourself. So it goes back to that original point. Now, are there different things that you need to do to connect everybody in the chat? I would say in the chat, where you at? Give me hands in the chat. Like, there are different ways to engage now that you're in the virtual space. But in order to connect with your audience, I just say real recognize real. And whether you showing up in person or you show up on camera, it's one and the same. And for me, that would be the goal of any speaker, is when you see me in person, it's the same as how y'all seeing me right now. When you saw me on camera and then you get to see me in person, it's like, oh, there's consistency there. Being consistent. And I think that is the superpower of being able to transition from in person to then making an impact and being able to connect with your listeners and your viewers in the virtual stages.
Yeah, one of the podcast interviews that I did, we were talking about email marketing and how to have your authentic voice, or find your authentic voice even in email. And so I feel like this definitely connects to that. It's really about like, how can you be authentic? I think for me, once I started doing, no, I actually don't do a lot of live streaming. So let me not say that, but let me say doing these podcast interviews, I wanted to sound a certain way. I felt like I had to sound like really polished. And, I had this thought in my mind of how I wanted to show up and how I wanted to present. And then I really just had to come to the place where I have to be me and show up as me. And obviously, like, there's things that I still need to work on as it comes to my public speaking skills and so on. But, I'm still going to show up as me. I'm still going to do it. I'm not going to let me not feeling like I'm showing up as how I want to show. I'm not showing up as how I want to show up stop me from actually showing up. Right. And so it's just about like being authentic, being confident in who you are. And also, I think really clarifying your message and how that message could translate to you connecting with others. Can you talk a bit about the clarity of message? Because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we do this, that. We're super multi-talented, multi-passionate, but so sometimes we need to like just hone in and narrow it down and really clarify our message so that we can make a greater impact and that we can boost our brand. So can you help us figure out, how do we get more clarity of message?
Yes. So this is something that I'm actually going to be recording a lesson on today. So I have an online group coaching program and it's called Privilege. And it's all about helping entrepreneurs and women like yourself speak with more confidence, credibility, and clarity. I say that all the time. And so there's a bonus video that I'm adding because some of my clients are still kind of thinking to themselves, how when I show up on a panel or a podcast or these virtual stages, and now it's my opportunity to talk and share, how do I organize my thoughts? How do I not ramble? How do I stay on point and be on message, right? And I say that delivering organized thoughts is about organizing even when you're not speaking. So everything that I'm sharing in today's in our conversation, this ain't new stuff. I done talked about it. If you listen to me talking on Instagram, or if you're listening to another podcast that I was on, or even just in regular old conversation, Natasha, this ain't new stuff. Now I may be saying it differently. I may be using different words. It's not a script, but it's the same ideas. It's so I prepared. These were messages that I've come up with. I just don't abandon those messages once I put them out in the world. I go back to those messages. If I said it once and it worked, I'm like, oh, let me keep that. Let me remember to make that a point. And that's why oftentimes you guys are seeing me, I'm taking notes. The one thing that I said in my podcast, not a podcast, but my Instagram video about imposter syndrome is separate feelings from fact. And now I'm like, oh, I got to keep going to that. I got to keep going to that. And then Natasha inspired me and I said, then also separate feelings from faith. So now it builds on, but this is preparation. So for the next podcast, I'm going to spit that out real fast and y'all going to think, oh, I just came up with that. Or, oh, she just flows. Boo-boo, I learned that in my last podcast. I actually took that as a note and I went back to it until it's internalized here. And when it's internalized here, then you just have to be patient for the moment where you can share it and it's relevant. So don't think that people who speak effortlessly and feel like they just have all their thoughts together, don't think that they're just coming up with it in that moment. They've prepared. They write their notes down. They probably journal. They probably document things. They've probably written a book or they've probably done some video work so that they've internalized their own messages in their own way. So prepare beforehand so that you can have a clear mind when you're actually speaking. When you've prepared and you understand your content in a more internalized way, it frees you up to just be in the moment and just connect and have a conversation. But if you're still having trouble, sis, I say that the power of one is it. Pick that one thing that you're going to talk about at that networking event. Pick the one part of your business that you want to share when you're meeting with your mastermind group. Pick one thing so that when you're asked a question, go in your mind and say, what's the one thing I want to say right now? What's the one thing? Oh, here's the one thing. And just say that one thing. The power of one.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So this was an amazing episode. I so appreciate you for being here. You dropped a lot of gems. And I'm excited for you guys to really take this information, implement it, apply it, connect with Sharia if you do have any questions or you want to work with her and you want to improve your public speaking skills. So what's one last gem that you'd like to leave us with? It could be public speaking, skills related, life related, anything.
I would say, I don't know if this is on my heart, but I would say that if you want to today start making changes in your public speaking or improve how good you feel about you when you open up your mouth and words fall out, I would say start journaling. And if you don't have a journal, get one and start writing about the themes and the topics and the subject matters of your life. I believe that journaling, I call it PMRJ. I do PMRJ in the morning. I pray, I meditate, I read, and I journal. And PMRJ for me has empowered me to do new things in my own career of being a public speaking coach. PMRJ allows me to be more in tune with my speakers in my privilege program. PMRJ makes it easier for me to show up here because I feel good about myself. I feel good about myself. And even if I was going through a tumultuous transition or going through a rough time, I would still feel good about myself because I know that I'm tending to self. So go get a journal, write about what you're insecure about, write about what you don't like about yourself, then write about what you love about yourself, write about, who you desire to become, write about how you feel like what you need to do in order to become that, write about your kids, write about your spouse, write about your job, write about everything and become the expert on you. So that when you show up into places, you know that you've researched you. Journaling is about researching you. So become a researcher of self.
Yes. PMRJ.
Yeah, PMRJ. I would text people and I'd be like, oh yeah, I just got done with prayer, meditation, reading, and journaling. And I got tired of writing all of that. I got done with PMRJ and I tell them once and then they know what PMRJ is.
Yeah. I actually need to implement journaling back into my morning routine. Yeah, I usually do meditation, a bit of reading, sometimes prayer. And so I think for sure I would need to implement journaling back into that. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. You guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye. Support you in that mission. And so it allows you to
Because you want to think about it, if you can give your attendees a win before
or through your company so that business owners can actually make sure that we can all learn from that, because essentially